Smoppy for life. Yeah. Smoppy for life. Stand up when the chief is here. Hands up. Yeah, the chief is here. Stand up when the chief is here. Hands up. Yeah, the chief is here. Yeah. Smoppy for life.
Good evening, fellow old boys and members of the My Class community joining us from around the world. My name is Ryan Marie. On behalf of the UK branch of the My Class Old Boys Club, I want to welcome you all to what proved to be a very interesting fireside chat with two prominent old boys. One of the most successful entrepreneurs that our school has produced, Rob Hersov, a Pasco 1977 vintage, and musician and producer Dave Scott from Fairfield 2005, known to us all as a driving force behind the Kiffness, one of South Africa's most prominent live electronic acts. Dave and Rob will speak for around 30 minutes, and then we'll have another 15 to 20 minutes of questions. While they are chatting, please do feel free to ask any questions you might have and put them in the comments box, and they'll get you as many as they can. So grab a coffee, grab a glass of wine, grab a beer, and Dave and Rob, thank you very much for being here this evening, and over to you guys.
Cheers, Ryan. I mean, Dave, you and I had a chat. We're not going to make this only 1 hour, okay? We're going to hang on here for hours and hours. We might try and break a record. And the other thing, I hope that people from Bishops and Hilton are watching, because they're never going to get two people as cool as us on this platform. What do you think?
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
Feeling a little bit technically disinclined. As you can see, I'm quite sort of static at the moment, but I think maybe after a beer, I'll start looking a little smoother. But
so
good to be with you, Rob.
Yeah, good to be with you, buddy. You're down the road here in Cape Town, which is great. And we met each other what feels like 1,000 years ago, but it was probably a couple of months ago in lockdown.
Yeah. So I was meant to play at your wife's 40th, as far as I know, and then
she's only 20.
Oh, her 20th. Sorry. So that was a big event planned, and I was really looking forward to it. But then obviously the lockdown hit, and unfortunately we couldn't do that. But obviously, I think through that whole thing, we kind of got to meet. I'm not exactly sure how. I think I was on Germ Warfare. He's a very interesting blogger and cartoonist, and we had a great chat, but for some reason YouTube took the video down, and I think through that whole experience, I think we kind of got to meet because you've obviously got a big interest in media and alternative media, and it's just been really interesting getting to know you and getting to know your background. I mean, You've had an incredible life, working for Rupert Murdoch, who started Fox News. You've lived all over the world, and for some reason you decided to come back.
I came back, and actually, I must say, I couldn't be happier being back in South Africa. And I've met some extraordinary people, as well as you. And it's actually extraordinary because I met you. My wife's like, this guy's really cool, the Kiffness. I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean the Kiffness? She said, just go and have a look at go listen to his music and have a look at what he's doing online. And for those Michael House boys who are kind of my age, who might not have heard of the Kiffness, type in the Kiffness, listen to the music, but most important, what he's been doing during lockdown, because it is not only fun and entertaining and genius and needs to go to the world, but he's also been making some very important messages. And you've got into a bit of trouble, haven't you, Davo? Tell us what happened.
No, big time. I guess it started when I satirized the national anthem. I already knew that when I did this, it was going to ruffle a few feathers, but I had no idea that the mayor of Ekurhuleni was going to, tweet a picture of my face saying, "Who is this little racist?" And essentially started a witch hunt on me. I mean, Tony Ngeni soon after that replied saying, "Twitter detectives, let's find this guy and skin him alive." Luckily, I'm still here. But that started a very interesting journey where I started to realize that, our democracy and our freedom of speech is very much under attack. I mean, I didn't incite violence. I didn't amount to hate speech in my parody. It was just light-hearted fun, you know, poking fun at the sort of lockdown rules that Dlamini Zuma had imposed with the cigarette ban and the alcohol ban. So I mean, when ministers start attacking regular citizens like myself, it does create a bit of cause for concern. So anyway, I had lawyers all in my inbox saying, you need to sue this guy for defamation. You did nothing wrong. But it was actually my dad, who's also an old boy. He said, no, you mustn't do any of that. Speak to him rather. So that's what I did. I got his number. I spoke to him. But what my dad didn't know was that I recorded the whole conversation and I put it up on YouTube. And yeah. But what I didn't know is that Messina was also recording. So he put up a little clip on his Twitter saying, you know, I spoke to this guy, the Kiffness, but he only posted a sort of 30-second clip, which kind of made him look like the hero in the situation. But I don't think he knew that I recorded the whole thing. So, I mean, I've always been the kind of person who wants to just talk about things and try and just find reason and moderation in these crazy times where they're just such polar forces. Everyone's kind of just down each other's throats, and I'm kind of the guy in the middle who's just trying to be a bit of a peacemaker and having fun at the same time. I mean, I think it was Oscar Wilde who said, if you want to tell people the truth, at least make them laugh. Otherwise, they're going to want to kill you.
And what you've been doing, I mean, you started off as a singer and entertainer with a rock band, a very successful one. By the way, we're having the party this coming April, and you're coming as you're not just playing at one of the events, but you're also coming as a guest. So we've doubled down. I think that's expression. But you've done a lot of parody and satire and very funny stuff, as well as some very beautiful stuff. I think your father and son song with your dad was phenomenal. So I know your dad's watching this. So Davo's dad.
My dad's in the room next door having a kip after a round of golf.
But tell us what you're doing on the satires, because it's genius, what I think.
Yeah, so I mean, at the start of lockdown, it was all just shits and giggles, you know, doing parodies about the lockdown. And I think there's a lot of similarities between parody and satire, but the only difference is that parody is just a laugh, but with satire, there's a lesson, or at least you're trying to expose some kind of flaw or idiocy in the government and that kind of thing. So satire is a lot more dangerous, but I think it is kind of just the next step from parody. I mean, parody's easy to do, but satire I think is a little bit harder. And yeah, not a lot of people are sort of brave enough to do it. Sometimes I think, yes, he should have said that, because I find myself in a lot of heat.
And you know, you've been very brave, because your business is heavily reliant on gigs, which have in many ways been killed by lockdown, but also sponsors that sponsor your music and your entertainment. And most sponsors are too terrified to stand up against the powers that be. But I also want you just to mention, have you been deplatformed by Google and those other leftist organizations? Sorry, that's my editorial comment.
No, I think you're completely right in saying that, because I actually made a parody of Pharrell Williams's Happy, and it was called Crappy. And it was all about, you know, conspiracy theories and just saying, you know, my thoughts are crappy, clap along if you think, you know, just like all the sort of conspiracy theories. And then YouTube took it down because the YouTube bots, I think, couldn't detect the sarcasm and the satire. So they thought what I was saying was supposedly my truth, but I was actually just taking the piss. So it just got taken down with no explanation. Same thing with my conversation with Germ. I mean, it was a lovely conversation. My parents were watching and they thought, oh, that was a nice conversation. But obviously we had said something in jest, and the YouTube bots sort of
Killed it.
the red flags went up and killed the whole thing. It's just completely bizarre.
What people think they're sort of these evil lefties hiding in a sort of, in a basement that say, we're going to knock this guy out. He's too center right. And Google hired 30,000 people, just to do this. But there must be millions and millions of posts, so that it's actually an algorithmic bot that's looking for certain things. And, you can be deplatformed for absolutely no reason whatsoever, because they picked up 3 words in a row that, bang, you're gone. And they don't have to give you a reason. That's a terrible thing.
Yeah. So, apart from that, a lot of brands that were fans of my parodies, obviously jumped on board quite early on. They saw the amount of views my videos were getting. The video with my dad has gotten well over 10 million views in total. And obviously when you're a brand and you see those kind of figures, you want to kind of jump on board. And I was more than happy to take on brand work. Work with brands that I use, and, it was great. But then when I started doing a bit of satire, I think they started getting a little bit nervous. And I think in some way, rightfully so. I think the last thing I would want is for one of the brands I work with to have the EFF sort of toying outside their offices, because, I'm one person. I can handle heat from, an organization like the EFF, but when it's a whole company, you got to take into consideration, all the employees and the stakeholders and that kind of thing. So, I do understand to a degree why brands wouldn't want to work with me, but on the same token, I think we need more brands to just grow a bit of balls.
Yeah, exactly. To brave up. I've been called, I can't be deplatformed, I can't be fired. And so I'm actually back in South Africa saying and doing things that other people can't afford to say and do. But I've been called the green-eyed devil by the EFF and those boys. I'm actually quite proud, So I can't tell my wife.
It's a
green-eyed devil coming to bed now. I'm quite proud of that. But Dave, are you, Michael House, I'm turned 60 this year, like a lot of, the guys are more or less my age, turned 60 or older. Do we have any other rock star old boys from Michael House? Or are you the first that's really big in the music industry?
I can't think of any other musicians. My first bandmate was a guy that was in my dorm. Velo Shandu, we were in the choir and the jazz band together, and we actually started the Kiffness together. Unfortunately, parted ways. We're still very good friends. And his brother was my Kak, Sunder. And Sunder's actually done really well. I don't know if you know him, but he's done incredibly well as an actor. He's been in plenty of plays, a lot of adverts. He was the face of KFC for a long time, and he's done incredibly well. But otherwise, it's obviously Pat Lambie. He's the real hero.
I was at school with his dad. His dad was my generation. But the funny thing is, if you ask Michael House boys, who are the famous business or other or sporting heroes, there are hundreds. Sir John Craven, Gary Rafe, Lambie, Ross Cronier, Celliers, you can go on and on and on the business front, tons. Devesh McCann out in Silicon Valley is probably one of the most powerful people in Silicon Valley. And the Collins brothers, I think they actually own Hilton. I don't know if the Hilton boys know that Michael House old boy owns the land. And, on and on and on. But if you ask a Bishop's boy, and I have done as I live in the Cape, tell me who is some of the famous alumni, and they go, Raymond Ackerman. Yeah, Raymond Ackerman. And the guys that own Pick and Pay, they're also, and then Jonathan Ackerman. They can't name any. It's ridiculous. There are a couple of Hilton guys that have done okay. A couple of Skin Stats and people like that. Good guys. And St. John's, but
your dad's quite a legend in his own right, Rob.
Those are big shoes.
He's in his 90s now, and he's still flying planes.
Yeah, he's 94, still flying planes, honorary colonel of 21 Squadron. And And I moved back to Cape Town with my New Zealand wife 4 years ago. Beautiful house, which you've been to. And my dad comes to visit after I've been here a few months. And he walks around, age 90, 91. He goes, bit expensive, this house. I go, Dad, this is my own money. And he goes, yeah, but I'm your father, which is pretty cool. He's a cool guy. You'd love to meet him. I think he must be one of the older old boys.
Yeah.
But Michael, I haven't been back to Michael House since I left. Although my father's a governor. My brother's been back tons of times. I've had, nephews in the first team in the last few years, rugby. I haven't been back. Isn't that amazing?
Well, let's make a deal now. When this whole lockdown nonsense subsides, let's go for a Hilton my class, but we're going to fly in one of your private jets.
My Mr. Jets. Not sure where it's going to land. It'll probably land at Kinshasa. But okay, let's do it. That's a deal.
We'll land on Meadows. I'm sure.
Land on Meadows.
I'm sure Meadows is long enough. We just got to, fly just under the post so that we.
I don't know about taking off again. But David, when you were there, tell me a little bit about when you were at Michael House, because some guys will remember you, most won't. Did you captain the rugby apart from being in the choir?
I was captain of the jazz band. We went on jazz band tour in 2004, and one of the few perks was that we could get a tour jacket, but it was the exact same jacket as the first team rugby. So this was wonderful to me. I was like, I'm getting this jacket, and I was walking around with this thing, and the first team rugby players were very upset. They were like, "Why are you wearing that?" And then I said, "I'm first team jazz band, bro. What's the problem?"
Bro.
No, but I played second team rugby for a while, and I think I had a bit of wheels. I played on the wing mostly, and did well in inter-house athletics. 400 was my race. But yeah, I think being sort of relatively good at sports helped me a bit at my class, if I could say that. I think a lot of the guys who were sort of musical or maybe a bit artsy or effeminate were kind of picked on a little bit. I hope things have changed a bit, but I know that the arts are taken a lot more seriously at my class. When I was there, it was not really taken that seriously, and I see the marimba band popping up here and there, doing their thing. Like I see videos of them doing great stuff. I see, guys forming bands, interesting bands with saxophone and violin, and those guys.
Let me ask you a question. When Mike when at the first team games where the guys do the amazing,
the war
cry, and then they hold up the panels, the white and red and things. It blew my mind when I first saw that. I was living in London at the time.
Yeah.
Did Michael House start that? I'm sure we were ahead of Hilton and Bishops and St. John's and everyone.
I'd love to say that we were, but Hilton started it. But we decided, what, we're gonna try and do this thing. I think I was in one of the first years to actually start it, and I think the first time we actually did it, we didn't spell Michael House or anything like that. I think the first thing we did was learn how to spell eat. And so obviously Hilton had no idea, but while Hilton was spelling Hilton, we spelled eat. And then the parents on the bank were just laughing and clapping. And the funny thing is the boys thought they were clapping for them, but they're clapping for us, saying
eat Hilton.
So I mean, from there it obviously progressed and got a lot more technical and just way better. And I think now we're miles ahead of Hilton. I mean, I think Hilton are just doing the same trick as far as I know, just spelling Hilton. I mean, it's very impressive, but we're kind of making sort of animated
crazy
sort of
stuff.
Things and like it really is impressive.
Murray Witherspoon says that great old Michael House musicians include Paul Hepker, Rainer Schneider-Waterberg. So there we are. There's some others. That's pretty cool. And I see Ant Hewitt's on here. Hey, Ant, good to see you again. But
yeah, there's another musician. I actually have no idea where he is now, but there was a guy called Derek Saunders who was in the choir, and he had the most unique voice I'd ever heard. And I think he did want to take it seriously and kind of become he was a baritone, and he sang Old Man River like you can't believe, like in octaves that are abnormally low, like it was ridiculous. So
Old Man River.
there you go.
There we go. So I'll tell you something weird about my, I was in the 60s and 70s, my, Ridge Michael House. And it was quite a scary time because in the 60s and 70s, the sort of colonial rule in Africa started to collapse. East Africa, Zambia, the whole British colony collapsed. And then in mid 1975, the Portuguese colonies collapsed. And that was a big deal. Mozambique and Angola overnight. And I remember in the newspapers as a schoolboy seeing, a picture of columns and columns and columns of trucks and cars heading south of these poor people who'd just been left by the government of Portugal to fend for themselves. And there was a guy in my year, Stephen Pendray, whose dad was the Chevrolet dealer in Mozambique, wealthy family. And they just left. And I think they left with jewels hidden in sandwiches overnight. Within 24 hours, have got and left everything behind. And then came Zimbabwe, so, and when I was there, the first Michael House boy died of, being killed on the border. And he was a great friend of son of my parents, Christopher Robin was his name. And he was my parents' best friend's son. And it was quite scary because you knew that this was happening and you were going to go to the army, which I did. I spent 2 years in the military as an officer. But it was coming, you just felt things were closing in a bit. And it was the first time when you felt as a young South African, a bit scary. But also we got television for the first time, because I don't know if you know, but South Africa never had black and white TV because the Nat government felt it was going to be a bad influence. We know, of course, they were right. It's a very bad influence even today. Yeah. But we didn't get black and white TV. The first we ever got, I think, was 1971 or 72, was color television. Boom. And there was that show, whatever it's called, in Texas. We used to sneak around to the medical center to watch television now and again. It was like, whoa, TV. So that was the weird things about can I remember from my school. Hey, Anne says, Rob Hersoff played in the chess team. I did, Anne. Thank you for remembering that.
Really?
Look at the Hersoff, Kasparov, Karpov, all the great chess players.
So it's funny you say that, because when I was at Pridwin, we used to go over to the Ridge and play you guys in chess. And I was the Pridwin chess captain. So we should actually have a game at some stage. I don't know if you
let's have it at Michael House Old Boys Day at the rugby. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. There was a chess club at my class, but I never joined because I didn't want to get bullied.
Do you know, funny you say that, but
I actually did. I actually was part of the chess club. I lie. For 2 years, I used to go down to sixth form and we used to play chess there, and it was actually good fun.
Do you know the one thing about what was I going to say? The thought's gone. The thought's gone. It wasn't to do with chess, it was to do with something else. But I mean, I haven't been back, and there's Andrew Robertson, who's a very famous Michael House old boy who runs BBDO worldwide, one of the biggest marketing and advertising agencies. He did matric and left the country. His mum and dad then moved to England, and he hasn't been back to South Africa since he left in 1977. And I asked him why. I said, why haven't you been back? It's the most incredible country in the world. It's beautiful. I can't believe I left so long before I came home. And he said, Rob, I had the best childhood of anyone I know. And those memories, I want them as they are. I don't want to go back and see how Pietermaritzburg's changed. Isn't that interesting? Yeah.
And can you echo those sentiments? I mean, you left in the 80s.
Yeah, I left in 1985, 6 years in America, 25 years in Europe, came back 4 years ago. And my wife, who's a Kiwi, said it's got to be Cape Town. So here we are. Not bad.
So what made you come back, Rob? I mean, you're very successful. You could live anywhere in the world. You could live, I mean, you're living in London, correct?
Yeah. Because, I've had failure. I've had businesses that have failed and businesses that have succeeded. And the ones that have succeeded are all based in London. And one day I kind of woke up when I realized that the 4 businesses are going really well, all have great CEOs, and all of them would kind of get irritated when I come into the office because I always come in with 10 new ideas, and they'd be like, Rob, do you mind just letting us hit budget, please? And then I said to my wife, I'm chairman of these companies, majority shareholder. We can actually live anywhere in the world. And so she said, and I'm saying, why don't we go to Singapore? Why don't we go? And then one day she said, look, can you just stop driving me mad and present to me properly, like CEO to chairman, me being CEO, her being the chairman. And I did an analysis of Dubai, Johannesburg, Cape Town, and everything. And she just said, stuff you, we're going to Cape Town. And that was it. And when I got back, I realized that I was in a unique position because, you know, I can leave, I can be the last chopper out of Saigon. I can leave on a dime. I can't be fired. Most of my wealth is overseas. But I realized I had a responsibility, and my wife actually told me this. One day she woke up after about 8 months of being here, reading the, you know, Daily Maverick or something. She said, this fucking ANC government's going to screw up this amazing country. Zuma was in charge then. She said, why don't you do something about it? And I said, okay, the penny's dropped. I will. And so I have my responsibility, and one of the reasons I came back is to say and do things that other South Africans can't afford to say and do. So I can say Julius Malema is a puss. I can say, which he is, and that's being polite. I can say the ANC are kleptocrats and ineptocrats. And again, I'm right. And I can say it, and I don't care what they think of the green-eyed devil. And, you know, in your case, you know, I want to back you. I want to back Germ. I want to back people that are being brave, standing up for what they believe in. But being deplatformed for you is a big deal. It's a financial big deal. For me,
yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't want to have to be the person, you know, saying this stuff and saying, you know, what Julius Malema and the ANC are doing is just wrong. Like, I don't want to have to do that because, you know, in an ideal world, the Human Rights Commission would look after Julius Malema and the incitement to violence and the hate speech that he spews every day. The media would do something. They're not doing anything. And, you know, obviously our government has stolen 500 billion rand. And I mean, I would love to just be a musician and get on with my life and just be creative. But like you, I feel like there's a bit of a moral obligation to kind of just stand up and do something. I think in your position, maybe it is a little bit easier because, as you say, you can't be cancelled. You're in a position where you actually can say stuff. But a lot of musicians in my position, I think, feel the things that I say, but they're just too scared to say it because they want to be playing on radio. They want their fans to come to their shows. But I've just said, well, you know, this is actually more important because if we don't make a stand, then we're not going to have any of this anyway. So might as well, you know, do our best to try and make a difference and try and, you know, fight back against the propaganda that's being spewed in mainstream media. I mean, if you look at some of the reports on the things that I've said, it's just so completely biased. It's like they're not even trying to hide it. And it's great to know that guys like you, with your background in media, I mean, working for Rupert Murdoch and having that experience and coming back here, and can you actually tell us a little bit about the sort of media platform that you're building here?
So what I'm trying to build is something that, funnily enough, Andrew Neil, who I did work very closely with, he was probably the greatest editor this side of the century, and certainly the best interviewer on television worldwide today, is building. And it's called GB News. And it's really a voice for the people that are being cancelled, attacked. You know, the BBC is too left-wing, CNN is fake news. But if you go up against these organizations, either you get cancelled by crazy, you know, minorities, or a bot will say, you said the wrong thing, you're out, and we're not going to even tell you why, and that's the problem. So Andrew's building that engine for the likes of us. You know, it's not a right-wing organization, whatever that means. It's a people that believe in democracy and capitalism and freedom of speech. It's for those people, which is you and me. And I'm building that for the same people, and I'm going to ally with Andrew Neil and what he's doing. Interestingly, there's one man standing up for South Africa, and that's Tucker Carlson in America. And I want to get Tucker to South Africa. You know, he's done quite a lot for us already. And now that, you know, Fox is on the other side of the American election going forward, you know, I'd like to get Tucker down here to have a real look. I'd like to get some of these powerful people like Andrew Deal to come down. I did an interview with Jeremy Clarkson. He had no idea about farm murders. You know, Piers Morgan, those powerful people. We need to inform them, and we need the international people to know what's going on here and keep the pressure up. By the way, you know, Cyril's on TV right now telling us if we're locked down or not. I have no idea. Do you know what's going on?
Yeah. I'm gonna get a report from my parents a little bit later, I think.
Okay.
But yeah, as far as I know, I might not all the gigs that I've had planned for December might go down the toilet, but who knows? But it's interesting you talk about Tucker, Rob, because like I've always considered myself a moderate, maybe left leaning, and I maybe 2-3 years ago was kind of the guy who thought, Fox News is fake news, or they
Crazy,
they praise Trump. Like I'm not the biggest Trump fan, but I now know for a fact that CNN reports very selectively on him. And, you know, we just got to be so careful about the media that we consume. I mean, you know, the way they painted him as a sort of racist who's endorsed by the Ku Klux Klan and that kind of thing.
He's no racist. Yeah.
Meanwhile, he's disavowed the Ku Klux Klan multiple times, but CNN just doesn't report on it.
And he's never been a racist. Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that you know, I've always kind of just had the impression that Trump is this right-wing racist, where, you know, it could just be the media making me believe that that's who he is. So I mean, just going through the things I've been going through now with the media attacking me and making false allegations, I almost have a little bit of sympathy for Trump and the battles that he would fight. So I mean,
you know,
yeah,
it's interesting what's happening to the world, and one thing's happening is, you know, the West and China are building their own systems. So, you know, a lot of the American sort of Facebook and WhatsApp and things are being banned in China or being pushed back, and the Chinese are developing their own. There are going to be these two parallel systems. There are going to be two separate forms of 5G, two separate echo chambers. And even within our lives, you know, I'm not on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, or Instagram, and never have been. Okay. I live with this delirium. I live in an echo chamber. I only read what I want to read. I only listen to the bloggers that I'm interested in. I really live in an echo chamber, and I think the world's heading in that direction. It's going to be huge polarization. You know, I only believe Fox News, and I only disbelieve CNN.
And I think that's something we almost have to actively fight against. I mean, you saw a video of a young UCT student who made a whole video on YouTube about why I should be deplatformed. I mean, it was obviously very biased and ignorant, but it got a little bit of support. And I thought to myself, you know, I could have a go at this guy and just say, you know, he's being an idiot. But instead, I thought, let me do what I did with Messina. I didn't record the conversation this time, but we had a 1 hour long chat, and he was actually a decent chap. It's very strange how a lot of my detractors are so different in human. Like when I see them face to face, it's like a completely different world. I mean, what people say online, I think is just very different to what they would say to you in person.
So Mike McDonald's has made a very interesting point here on the chat bot. I don't know if you've got it here. Here we go. Really interesting to hear both of your opinions on media bubbles and not seeing the whole story. Can either of you advise how to diversify our own media input streams to get a balanced perspective? I mean, that's a big question. What do you read? What magazines do you subscribe to, other than Pornhub?
I don't watch porn, Rob.
No.
But
I finished Pornhub. Is there Pornhub 2.0 yet? I finished the first one.
Yeah, so I've really been enjoying sort of alternative media. So guys like Ramon Cabernac, Ronaldo Gous, Germ, I really enjoy watching them because, I think their agenda is just to really try and tell the truth. I mean, everyone's going to have their own bias, but that's why I watch all of them. Ronaldo considers himself moderate, maybe left-leaning, like myself. Roman and Germ are maybe more conservative, but I think it's important to, try and latch on to independent news sources. I mean, you
The
can't
ones that
trust.
I love, the ones that I love overseas are Dave Rubin, Ben Shapiro, but his voice gets irritating. His brain moves too fast, so he becomes a bit irritating. And Douglas Murray. Wow, if anyone's listening here, follow Douglas Murray. Extraordinary. What an intellect. Those are my guys that I follow internationally, and I subscribe to the Spectator. I like the Times. I like the Times here, actually. I think it's improving. And then the Times of London. What else do I read? That's about it. It's quite a lot of reading.
So Sunday Times, is it under new ownership now?
Yes, it is. Yeah. So Nkunku Sawazi, Tiso Group used to own it, and they've sold it to the Labashe Group, and it's under new ownership. And I think they are now heading way more to the center and being way more reasonable on their viewpoints. I think it's come good. I'm a subscriber. I think it's great.
Is that Warren Wheatley? Forgive
That's
my
Warren,
ignorance.
Exactly. That's Warren Wheatley's the chief investment officer. He's a great guy.
Yeah. So for anyone listening, if you're an old boy who wants to make connections, I mean, I haven't made use of the old boy network until I met Rob. And I'm in a WhatsApp group now with a bunch of people in the media. And it's just been amazing since I've made these connections through Rob, just the amount of good press I've been getting. And it's not like bias. It's shining a spotlight on, the good stuff that I do, and not just like the sort of clickbaity propaganda things that IOL and the Citizen just spew every day. It's just nonsense. And I know that I'm defending myself here, but if you go and look at it for yourself, you'd understand that it's just crazy. And it's just clickbait. I don't think they're actually concerned with reporting the truth these days. I think they just want to get traffic to their website, in all honesty.
Do you know what's interesting is your strategy with the mayor of Ekurhuleni. I don't even know where that place is. I think it's somewhere near Ekurhuleni.
It's by the airport here.
Okay. In Cape Town or is it in Joburg? Oh, it's in Joburg.
Yeah.
So, and then also this guy who I heard what he said, and I just wanted to go in there and like flatten him. But you actually have had conversations with them, and that's so smart because you knock them down one by one, but it's time consuming. I've got to ask you a question about your humor during lockdown. Okay, I mean the Hardy Doll one is genius, your song, but I also love the Mondeling because we had Mondelings even in my day. My God, that's funny. If anyone who hasn't seen it, here's what Mondeling. It's hilarious because you're singing the Afrikaans that most English speakers in South Africa, that's the limit they get to.
But I feel like your generation is far better at Afrikaans than we were. And I think I don't know if they did the same with you, but when my dad was at school, they used to send the kids out to a farm where the farmers only spoke Afrikaans, and you were there for like a week or something, only speaking Afrikaans. Did you have anything like that?
We had 2 years in the army. Have you heard somebody swearing and giving orders in English versus someone swearing and giving orders in Afrikaans?
It's not the same.
It's so much better. I mean, the swear words are better, the orders are better. So much better than come over here, you long-haired blah. It's way better in Afrikaans. Way better language.
Talking about Mafro, the boys at my class actually got hold of it and played it to my Mafro de Toy, who's still there. So she left a comment on the video saying, David, jy's 'n regte Hansbors, which is a clown.
Do you know the funny thing about Afrikaans music is I've more recently getting hearing songs and then finding out who wrote that. Do you know Stukkie van der Merwe? Do you know the song Stukkie van der Merwe? It's just
Can't say I do.
Okay, well, I'm sort of starting to listen to these songs. My wife comes into the room and she goes, "What the hell are you listening to?" And I'm kind of not sure what to tell her, that I'm following Jack Parrow and Kurt Darren, and I actually want to get up and boogie. You know, maybe it's an age thing.
No, I've actually done a
Can you
song
delete
with
that,
Kurt.
Lauren? Can you delete that bit? That's kind of
Yeah, someone's going to use it against you.
definitely. So I'm looking for some questions here from the audience. David Earl was the CAC for Andrew Robertson. How interesting is that? And Anthony
Wow.
Hewitt says Nelson Mandela Bay back in lockdown. But is that lockdown 1, 2, or 3? I think Cape Town's going to get lockdown 2 on Monday. But I don't know how that affects your business.
For me, that just means I can only play to crowds of 100 people, which doesn't make it worth my while unless people are willing to pay 500 Rand a ticket.
Well, I think I know those people, so we got to do that for you.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Seriously,
let's sort out a private party at Rob's place.
I'm on for that. Actually, 100%. I think my wife's thinking December the 19th. Has she told you yet?
I've heard rumors of December the 19th. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So, what question do you want to ask, Davo? Come on, hit me with one.
Sure.
Why
don't you tell us a little bit more about Smutby, Rob?
Okay.
So this is
the
WhatsApp. This is the WhatsApp group I'm in. So there are a bunch of WhatsApp groups that Rob invited me to. I've stayed on 2, the cryptocurrency one and the media one. It's the only ones where they don't post crazy stuff. I mean, the other groups, like I'm all for freedom of speech and that kind of thing, but some of the stuff was just a little bit too much for me. But I'll let you take it from here.
Do you know who founded Smutby in 1985, 2 months before the Rugby World Cup? Sean Flanagan went to Michael House, and he added 2 of us, me and a great Zimbo guy called Ken Kinsey Quick. And I just started adding people, and it veered out of control within a few weeks, porn and memes and politics and everything. To cut a long story short, there are almost 100 WhatsApp groups now, 100. There's Smutby London and Scandinavia and Italy and USA. There's politics, there's food and agri, there's investments, there's crypto. And it's got 2,500 people worldwide, mostly South Africans abroad, and friends of South Africans, to be fair. But it's growing like a rocket. And it's got such a DNA of people helping each other. Pay the goodness forward. Somebody asks for a favor, you help them, you don't ask for anything in return. And it's spreading. It's like a new world positive cult. And it's a great thing. So I'm happy to add people. And I know Sean Lumley's building a similar, probably more sensible organization in London for Michael House Old Boys. But this Smutby thing it's sort of devoured me. But it's very powerful. People helping each other and feeling good about it. There is a quick question here on what it was like to work for Rupert Murdoch. I'll just tell you the one thing about him. That's for Richard Hampson. Rupert, he's probably the greatest businessman walking this earth. Warren Buffett's an investor, hugely successful, but Rupert Murdoch ran tons of businesses on tons of topics, and he'd make decisions so quickly. He once asked me to analyze a business, country music television. I came and presented it to him. And he went, nobody's interested in country music TV. This is 1990, when Christian music was a big thing. And I said, well, Rupert, I'd have thought so too, but actually it's booming. And he asked me 5 questions in rapid fire, and I answered them. I wish I'd written down what they were. And at the end of 5, he rubbed his forehead. He always used to rub his forehead. He said, okay, offer them $29 million. If they don't take it, move on. I mean, they didn't. It was worth way more. And the other thing is he was he didn't think he was smarter or better than anyone else. He'd go and speak to taxi drivers, the guy selling his newspaper, the doorman, and he was genuinely interested when he was speaking to them. And when he was speaking to me or speaking to you, you're the most important person in the world. He's an extraordinary man. No airs and graces.
Tell us how you met him, because I remember you telling me that you went in for an interview and you said one word. I mean, it's a crazy story.
I said one word. It is crazy. I was dating quite a hot redhead when I was at Harvard Business School. And I told her I want to get in the media business. She said, go see Stan. I'm going to tell you this quickly. Okay, this story. Go and see Stan Schumann at Allen and Company, investment bank. Went to him and he said, look, if you want to be in the media business, you should work for News Corp. And I'm on the board, but you probably should go and see this guy, John Evans. So I walked from his place to John Evans's office. And I said, you know, I had my hair cut like a G.I. Joe, tie, you know, Harvard Business School at 1980s. And John Evans says, before you say a word, let me tell you about myself. I'm a reformed drug addict and alcoholic, and I'm marrying a girl half my age. I almost fell on my knees and went, hire me now, I'm your man. And he was the guy that sat next to Rupert and said, you know, in a supermarket, the fish should be next to the chips and the peas, because people buy fish and chips and peas. They shouldn't have to walk around, should have it all together. And he was this kind of weird visionary genius. So I hadn't said a word to him, and he just talked and talked. And then he said, well, if you're going to work for News Corp, you've got to go and meet Rupert. So he picks up the phone, goes, yeah, he is South African, Harvard Business. Yeah, I know you don't like Harvard Business. Yeah, okay. Name's Rob. Yeah, I'll send him over. Click. I hadn't said a word yet. Walk into Rupert's office. He goes, oh, you're Rob. Great to meet you. Please sit down. What do you think the future of the media business is? And I went, technology. And he went, no, you're completely wrong. It's content. And then he spoke for 20 minutes. I'd said one word, okay, in 2.5 meetings. And he goes, well, terrific that you're going to come and join me. I'll see you on Monday morning. And that was it. I'd said one word to the two top people. And I hadn't even graduated. I hadn't even had my holiday with my parents. I had to turn up on Monday morning and start work in New York. That was the story. But what an extraordinary man. Really extraordinary. But Ant Hewitt says, one last thing, and then Dave, back to you. He goes, what about Sportal? Well, Sportal was my biggest failure. I built a huge sports media internet business in Europe from 98 to 2001. I owned the exclusive internet rights and wireless rights to AC Milan, Juventus, Paris Saint-Germain, Bayern Munich, and 20 other football clubs. Exclusive in perpetuity. I raised $130 million, and we were too early. We thought broadband would come. It didn't come. So I lost $130 million of mine and shareholders' money, gone, and I had to lay off 300 people. And I remember the day, my worst day was front page of the newspapers in England, from hero to zero, and then a picture. Yeah. And I drove, my head was spinning, and I drove into the back of someone's car on the way to work, and he had a beautiful collector's car. Went bump, not hard, just dunk, at the traffic light. And he gets out and goes, what the are you doing? I said, listen, I'm having a bit of a bad day. I'm really sorry. I'll pay for it. Here's my card. I'm so sorry. And anyway, the guy is running one of the biggest private equity funds in Europe, and he's become one of my best friends, because he got back to his office, had a look at my name, had a look at the news, and went, yep, he's having a bad day. So
wow,
that was that story. So Dave, here's a question for you. Will you do a set with Cat Stevens at the Gordy from Antioch?
Which Cat Stevens are we talking about? My dad. Well, yeah, I'm sure my dad would be open to it, but it's amazing how that video went viral. I think, people obviously enjoyed it, but I was just looking at why it was being shared so much. And a lot of people sort of in Brazil or Spain were saying, oh my word, Cat Stevens and his son did the song together. And I think that's partly why it went viral. And I couldn't understand it. But then someone actually did a side-by-side photo of Cat Stevens now with my dad, and the similarities uncanny, and then one with Cat Stevens when he was younger and me now. And I can see how people kind of made the mistake.
That was a beautiful song you did with your dad. Really beautiful.
No, well, now that I'm here with him, I think
pull him
we're
in.
Gonna do, we're gonna do a Christmas, maybe a little Christmas parody. You better
Tonight.
Watch out, better not cry. Yeah, that's all I'm
now.
giving you.
Right now.
Well, maybe not right now, maybe tomorrow, or while I'm still here.
And Dave, Oliver M says he sees you having royalty fights on behalf of artists. Are those issues resolved, or is it still going on?
Oliver M, if that's Mandla Mashanini, good to see you, man. I was in Farfield with him. Yeah, so the royalty fights carry on. I mean, if you've been watching the news, the SABC is under massive trouble, people getting retrenched left, right, and center. But it's just crazy. The average salary was found out the other day. The average salary at the SABC is 790,000 Rand per person.
What?
Per year. So this is on average 65,000 Rand per month.
Average.
So I mean, yeah. So I mean, presenters I think are making 15, 20 grand at the most, and it's all being sort of taken up by the top 20 guys, like the guys who sit on the board at the SABC. And if you compare that to Prime Media, so 947 and KFM, the average salary there is 215,000 Rand, which is, you know, a lot more reasonable, and they pay the artists. So the royalty fight, it's a very long road. I personally would love to see the SABC just liquidate anything the government touches. I would love to just see gone.
I agree. Me too.
And I mean, it's horrible because I know lovely people who work at the SABC and are hardworking and just want to do their job. But at the end of the day, the organization is corrupt to the core. I mean, my fight to some degree, I think it helped. I started a petition to get the SABC to pay back the 250 million Rand debt that they owed to our royalty collection agencies. And they sort of began that process. I don't know how far it is now, but they started paying back SAMRO. They haven't paid back SAMPRA, not a cent. So all
South
the royalties I'm making.
And South African Airways has fired all their pilots, owes them a fortune. I mean, there's a huge amount of debt that the government owes, having stolen 500 billion. They owe people money left, right, and center. You know, SAA should be written off. SABC should be written off, and we start again.
Yeah, so I mean, I kicked up a massive fight when the SABC got bailed out last year. That they'd been bailed out for 2 billion Rand. And this was a perfect opportunity for them to just pay back the debts. I mean, 250 million Rand is like a tithe with that kind of bailout. And that was money that was meant to pay back debts, maintain the building, that kind of thing. What do? Increase wages. People get a lacquer wage increase. So, I mean, it's just complete mismanagement of funds. And as far as I know, I'm still the only artist in South Africa who refuses to send my music to them. And I wish other artists would, do the same. I mean, it's a matter of principle. If they're not paying you for your music, don't let them play it, because they're getting massive money from advertisers. And, you know, it's just a matter of principle.
Ask 2 more questions from the audience. Greg Jackson asks, off topic, but how would you interpret the South African job market for young people and school leavers? I mean, brutal, huh?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm lucky in the sense that I'm my own boss. I don't have to deal with, you know, BE or any of that stuff. But I know a lot of people that are almost overqualified. They're ready and willing to work, but they just can't get jobs. And, you know, plenty of my friends have just immigrated. It's unfortunate, but they feel like they have no choice. But I'm still very happy. I mean, I make most of my income from YouTube and Spotify and you know, platforms that don't have anything to do with the government, thankfully. So it's difficult to say, but I'm sure you'd have some more insight, Rob.
Listen, I just think, you know, try and get a foreign passport. You've got to create optionality if it goes down the plug hole. And there was a good question here from Sean Lumley, said, Dave and Rob, South Africans have overcome so many challenges over the past 120 years. Do you think we'll overcome the current challenges? My worry, and I'm on the pessimistic side, is that it's like a slow puncture. You know, if you don't, you can probably cycle along for a long time on a puncture, but at some point, that's it. The bicycle doesn't ride anymore. And I think we're reaching that point. South Africa's bankrupt. Zuma bankrupted us. I don't know. you know, Tito Mboweni tries his best. He's probably one of the best people on our cabinet. Maybe there are only 4 people I'd consider hiring for any business anywhere in the world on our cabinet. You know, we just got muffins in charge of the country. It's got to be negative.
I think we were on the sort of edge pre-lockdown, and I think lockdown kind of just pushed us over the edge. I think there was still hope, but you know, more and more people that I talk to are just saying, you know, lockdown killed our economy. Like there's no real coming back.
50% unemployment. That's 1 out of 2 people. And of the 50 that are employed, I reckon 25-30% work for the government, and the government's bankrupt. So what does that tell you? I think there's 700,000 people out of 40 million that pay tax. And of the 700,000, there are probably 10,000 that pay 80% of the tax. And that's probably you and me. We're in there. I'm very negative. I think create optionality, you know, try and live abroad for 5 years, get a foreign passport, and then come back if you want to. I'm negative. I hate to say it. Everyone's trying to say, Rob, please be positive. I can't be positive. There's a quick thing here, Dave. Ryan Marie just said before we finish, can you tell us about the day rooms with TVs versus before? It just brought back to me. You know, we didn't have TV for the first 2 years. We actually didn't have TV at all because it was in the, you know, the headmaster's room and the master's room. We didn't have it in the house.
What did you do in the day room?
Yeah, we'd have ping pong, table tennis. We're really good at table tennis. And we had records, you know, like vinyl records. And someone, I can't remember who had the job, would collect money from everyone, like 50 cents or whatever, and would go into Maritzburg and buy like 3 or 4 records. So I remember Electric Light Orchestra and, you know, Chicago and all these bands that, like, you know, I mean, I would never, ever have heard of, that some lunatic would go and buy in the record shop. And Rodriguez. I mean, I thought Rodriguez had been killed. I mean, when I saw that story, when I saw that, you know, Sugar Man,
so did you still
mind.
Think, like,
yeah,
before
until
you
I
watched
saw
Sugar
that,
Man, did you still think he was dead?
Yeah, I thought he was dead. We had a rumor he'd got shot on stage in Germany or something. That amazing documentary was 100% true and 100% how I grew up. You know, we loved the music, and then he disappeared, and we heard he'd been killed. That's true.
I've done a cover of Sugar Man. So the nice thing is, every time my cover plays on radio, 947 and KFM, because I don't send it to SABC, Rodriguez gets a little bit of royalties because he got completely schneid by record companies.
Schneid.
He didn't get a cent.
Such a good word. I haven't heard that
Very
word
my
for
class
about
word.
30 years. Schneid. You know, the last comment is coming back to South Africa was I wish I'd done it earlier, but it's so funny because each little tribe has its own sayings. Like, I haven't had schneid for 30 years, and it's just making me smile. It's like such a great country, this. I mean, come on, somebody has to save it. If it's not Dave and me, who is it?
So, I mean, your advice, Rob. I'm in my 30s now. I'm married. I'm wanting to have children. What would your advice be to me? Should I stay here, you know, try and buy property here, or do you think, you know, like you touched on earlier, have a bit of an exit strategy?
Look, you're in a better position than most because you're creating content that can go global. My wife, Kate the Kiwi, discovered you. This is, remember, everything's from our perspective. Discovered you, and she said you can be better than Pharrell Williams. You're not just a great musician. You're a great entertainer. You've got humor and intellect, and you're a Michael Huss old boy.
And that's the great thing. They're old boys all over the world. So, I mean, if I did go overseas, I think I'd have comfort in knowing that, you know, there'd be old boys who would, you know, support me like you've supported me. And
you'll make it big, Dave. You'll make it big. And I think what you've done for South Africa is very brave. And chapeau. This isn't a wig.
Right back at you.
This is real hair. It's not a wig.
No, look,
so, guys,
good for a 60-year-old.
Okay, stop it. So, guys, listen.
50,
this is the beginning of something. Sean Lumley and Ryan have put this on. You know, we're the first 2 Michael Huss old boys to come on here. I know it's downhill from here, but it would be great to have some more of you guys on here chatting away and a Fireside Chat. Davo, great to see you. And December night, please, let's organize some gigs and have some fun.
Awesome.
Awesome, buddy. Quis or Deus?
Yes, quit ye like men.
Quit
No,
you like men.
quis et Deus is who but God, but above the dining hall. Quit ye like men.
Exactly. Quit you
And,
like
and
men.
you've definitely quit like a man, Rob.
Okay, but I'm going to drink like a man now too. Cheers, buddy. Clink.
Yes.